It's time for the morning trade. AMD reports its earnings after the close, and we have a preview for you. Caroline Woods is here as we see the stock down, and it's no Nvidia, but let's see, what are folks waiting on when it comes to the earnings?
Well, both Nvidia and AMD under significant pressure so far in 2025. AMD down about 18.5%. So far this year, heading into this report, down about 2% today, 47% off the 52-week highs. So certainly under some pressure. This, of course, is going to be all about tariff outlook, that impact of the tariffs. If they give guidance, does it show, weaker sales? Does it show weaker demand? Last month, AMD said in a filing it would take up to an $800 million inventory and purchase commitment charge. That's related to tighter export control license restrictions to China. There's also the fact that China is pushing for more domestic alternatives in China, which adds a competitive threat to companies like AMD. In terms of the actual numbers we're looking for, you can see here adjusted EPS of 93 cents on revenue of $7.12 billion. That would represent 30% year-over-year growth. Data center and client segments have been the bright spots. Data center revenue is expected to be $3.45 billion. Client segment is expected to be around $2 billion. Gaming and embedded segments are the weak links. Gaming segment revenue was down almost 60% in the fourth quarter. That's expected to come in around $569.8 million. That's actually a sequential increase from Q4, but still a notable decline. In terms of the outlook, we know Intel already gave a softer than expected outlook for the June quarter, noting uncertainty around the tariffs. What analysts are looking for is EPS of 98 cents. On revenue of $7.35 billion. That's up 26% year over year. In terms of the bigger picture, AMD CEO Lisa Su has already said that they project strong double-digit percentage revenue and EPS growth for 2025, with data center AI business potentially scaling to tens of billions of dollars in the coming year. So all things to consider, it's very difficult to know for sure because there is so much uncertainty. So let's see what Lisa Su has to say about the landscape and how it's currently affecting AMD chips.
And she's so highly respected. When people say they buy companies because of the management, she's someone that people definitely have believed in, but it's been a tough environment, tough competitive environment. When we talk about which chips and how many chips, because we don't know, because we'll hear from Nvidia at the end of the month, but one of the things I was reading was how many chips did Nvidia really sell to China with the regulations? And we had the competition from Huawei, and we want to hear that from AMD too, right? I mean, who's taking market share? What's the battle really like?
I did see an analyst weigh in on that recently. Barclays actually reiterated Nvidia and AMD as overweight, so bullish on both names, saying that around the current news flow, they say we would point out Nvidia's recent press release writing down China inventory as indications that neither company plans to service the China AI market any longer, and thus should be less of a risk to numbers going forward. So reasons for bullishness. I will say we did see Bank of America recently come out and reiterate a neutral rating, saying that maintaining neutral on AMD's consistent execution, reasonable valuation, and attractive compute market exposure offset by strong competitive headwinds. Bernstein sticking with the market perform rating ahead of earnings because worried about outlook, saying unfortunately for AMD, the AI story, already somewhat tenuous, is likely to take another material haircut on the back of new China sanctions. The majority of analysts, more than 60%, do rate AMD as a buy, though. So the majority are bullish. The median price target is $130, so that's $32 or $31 higher than where it's currently trading. So there's some bullishness on the street, but we'll have to see how that plays out tonight when it actually reports.
And I'm sure shareholders are very happy it's come back from the $76 low, right? At least it got $20 plus off of that. So we will see. Thank you, Caroline Woods. Great to see you. A great preview there of AMD for you folks. Now, we want to also trade it. So Tim Biggam, option strategist at Buy Alerts, is with us. And you're watching AMD. How would you go and approach an example trade here?
Yeah, I would probably be cautiously bullish to almost neutral as well here, Nicole. I think you alluded to that kind of washout low below the 80 level. Certainly, I think that will be the low for a while here as the overall market and AMD in particular kind of, had a huge sell-off. So I'm just looking for the stock to really kind of remain somewhat range bound here. 95 now looks like pretty decent support on the chart. Certainly 107, the recent highs, some overhead resistance. Options implying about a 7% move on earnings here, which would put it somewhere up around that 107 level as well. So I'm just taking advantage of a big term structural vol edge, I think, by selling this week's 105 calls, by next week's 105 calls, paying right around 75 cents or so, give or take a few pennies. More importantly, able to sell about 120 IV, hedge it with around an 80 IV. So one of the steepest term structural volatility differentials we've seen in a while. And I think AMD, simply because it's come down so hard and they're still growing earnings, that combination of, a stock price at or near its yearly low and earnings continue to grow, give you some valuation finally on AMD. So I'm not looking for any fireworks here, but just looking for perhaps kind of a relief rally that is not as bad as feared. Certainly, as you talked about, the chatter on, the look forward on tariffs, what sort of, clarity, if any, on business we have, I think will be the key here as much as the earnings. So guardedly bullish, but not overly so.
Yeah, so cautiously optimistic, as they say here on this example trade. Thank you for that. And how are you feeling about the market overall? I mean, we snapped the winning streak, but we've certainly clawed our way back from the lows that we saw in early April. Some of your thoughts about where we could be headed to?
Yeah, I think as we get towards the end of earnings season, certainly Nvidia, the last of the mega caps left to report her earnings have been pretty decent overall, but the reaction certainly not as good as previously. I think valuation's starting to get questioned too. So I think we're kind of remain in this range that we kind of were in for most of March on the S&P. 5,500 now support to the downside. We're kind of nearing that 5,750 or so. Some upside resistance certainly. So I think we'll remain range bound with less volatility than we saw from a couple of weeks ago, certainly. And I think the market will just kind of grow in to, this level here until we get the Fed, moving probably out in July as far as, hinting at if they have a bigger rate cut lookout, then you might see the market rally. But if they kind of stay the course, I don't see the market really going anywhere here simply based on valuations and that nice bounce we had off that, 5,500 S&P low for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to scream big rate cut or anything because with the last we heard from Jay Powell, in fact, he wasn't implying a ton of rate cuts, that's for sure. And the market sold off. I mean, what are you expecting for tomorrow's action? Obviously, no one expects them to move on rates, but that language, are you preparing for a possible sell-off tomorrow, or what are you thinking for tomorrow?
I think it'll be nuanced, coming out of, Chairman Powell and the Fed here. I think anything will be tempered, to say the least here. So I think that's another reason the market may remain range bound. They're kind of accepted the fact that rates are not going to come down as much, certainly as the administration had hoped for. But there will be rate cuts, and I think that 10-year yield kind of reflecting that kind of stuck at that 4.25% give or take area here. So how the 10-year goes, I think will dictate where stocks go as well here, simply because valuations still at extremes on stocks. That price to sales ratio, S&P 500, not too far off that 3 times multiple, which has signaled 2 big sell-offs in the past when it hit there, the richest it's ever been in its history.
Tim, it's great to see. As somebody who loves lemons, I think that's a great shirt, Tim. Tim Biggam, option strategist, buy alerts. Thank you for being on with us today.